Destroyers. Destroyers are among the smallest warships in any fleet, usually focused on being an anti-submarine and escort vessel rather than going toe-to-toe with the larger battleships or cruisers. Or you would think. Then you look at the Royal Navy and US Navy destroyers and realize that they are captained by some of the most aggressive and frankly insane officers you could find. Let's just take some examples from World War II. You got HMS Glowworm, a small G-class ship of the Royal Navy. During the Norwegian campaign, she was tasked with locating German heavy units, that being cruisers and battleships, and on April 8th, 1940, Glowworm would come across two Kriegsmarine destroyers. However, to Glowworm's slight confusion, the two German ships ran instead of attempting to sink Glowworm. Lieutenant Commander Gerard Rope, Glowworm's captain, realized that destroyers would only do that if they are protecting heavier ships in the area. So, the Glowworm ended up following the destroyers and ran into KMS Admiral Hipper, a German heavy cruiser. Normally, any sane person would take a look at something that outgunned them and think, maybe we should run away. Not the crew of HMS Glowworm, though. Instead, Glowworm decided to take on Hipper. Let me tell you the armament of both ships to help put this into perspective. In one corner, we have KMS Admiral Hipper, with 8 8-inch main guns, 12 1.5-inch guns, 8 20mm guns for anti-aircraft defense, and 12 torpedo tubes. And in the other corner, we have HMS Glowworm, with 4 4.7-inch guns, 8 50 caliber machine guns, 2 torpedo tubes, and some depth charges that were only useful against submarines. In short, Glowworm was severely outgunned. But Glowworm had the spirit of Richard Leroy Jenkins with them, so they engaged. HMS Glowworm stood its ground, firing its main guns and torpedoes at Hipper in an attempt to sink her. Unfortunately, Glowworm would end up taking several hits, eventually catching on fire. And despite Glowworm's best attempt to hide in its smoke, Hipper was able to locate Glowworm using its more advanced radar. At one point in the battle, either Glowworm's steering jammed or Lieutenant Commander Rope decided to charge Hipper. Either way, that led to Glowworm turning around and headed straight towards Admiral Hipper. If I'm being honest, I would genuinely hope it was Rope who gave the order because that would just be incredible. Like, we're going down, might as well take the other guy with us. This led to Glowworm charging and ramming into Admiral Hipper. Despite this, the Admiral Hipper stayed afloat, but Glowworm began sinking. However, in a rare show of chivalry, Captain Helmuth Hay, probably butchered that, the commanding officer of Admiral Hipper, ordered his ship to stop near Glowworm and began rescuing Glowworm's crew from the water. Unfortunately, Lieutenant Commander Rope was not one of those rescued. Due to injuries, as well as helping other crew around him get on board, by the time Rope tried to rescue himself, he was unable to hold on to the rope net and would end up being swept underneath the waves. Captain Hay, however, would send a letter via the International Red Cross to the British Admiralty. The letter recommended that the captain of Glowworm should receive a medal for his valiant service. Lieutenant Commander Rope was in turn awarded the Victoria Cross. He was one of only 3 people to receive the award upon recommendation of the enemy. And that's where Glowworm's story ends, but not quite the video. Instead, I'll take you across the world to the waters around Guadalcanal in the South Pacific. Back and forth fighting have been going on pretty much ever since the US landed Marines to capture Henderson Field on the island, with the Japanese attempting to throw them back into the sea. On November 12th, 1942, going into the 13th, a Japanese naval force consisting of 2 battleships, Hiei and Kirishima, 1 light cruiser, and 11 destroyers sailed down the soon-to-be-named Iron Bottom Sound in order to shell the airfield in preparation for more troops landing on the island. Standing in their way was Task Force 67. After receiving a warning from aircraft the day before, a force consisting of 2 heavy cruisers, San Francisco and Portland, 3 light cruisers, and 8 destroyers were sent in order to try to stop them. One of these destroyers was USS Laffey. Laffey was a Benson-class destroyer, which was commissioned earlier in the year. Laffey was equipped with 4 5-inch 38 guns, 5 torpedo tubes, and a variety of medium and light anti-aircraft guns. As the force sailed out, there was confusion amongst the command staff of the U.S. ships, partly due to poor reconnaissance, communication issues within the fleet, and Rear Admiral Callahan not putting his ships equipped with the advanced SG radar at the front of his formation. This pretty much meant that the U.S. fleet ended up running into the Japanese fleet almost literally. What happened was a confusing melee. Callahan had lost command of his fleet, and in this melee was USS Laffey. Laffy found itself in probably the worst place it could have been. After initially engaging Atasuki, one of the Japanese destroyers, Laffy ended up face to face with the battleship Hiei herself. After barely missing Hiei by a mere 20 feet, Laffy was now surrounded and in close range of a battleship. However, Laffy instead aimed its guns and began raking Hiei with just about every single gun it had. Close range gunfire and machine guns smashed into Hiei, wounding the admiral of the Japanese fleet and killing his chief of staff. Hiei was unable to fight back against Laffy due to the two ships being too close to each other. Hiei's guns just couldn't depress enough in order to hit Laffy. Laffy's gunfire, along with the other ships pouring fire into the Japanese flagship, would actually doom Hiei. However, after Laffy had dealt pretty serious damage to Hiei, she would find herself confronted by Japanese destroyers. Laffy would not last too long against them, and eventually a fire would break out on board. This fire would reach the magazines, and Laffy exploded and sank with a heavy loss of life. To be honest, that's how the battle went for the US. Outside of Laffy's heroic actions, there was not much to celebrate. The chaotic battle would result in several American ships sunk and put the American position around Guadalcanal in a precarious position. Or at least it was until Admiral Lee came riding in on Washington to body Kirishima. However, this tiny little destroyer helped sink the Japanese flagship, wounded their admiral, and did all of that by complete and utter accident. These are just two examples of destroyers taking on larger ships and holding their own quite well. And that's not even all or even the most insane examples. You have Prion screaming at Bismarck, Johnson, along with the rest of Taffy 3, charging Yamato, Laffy, the later Laffy, not the previously discussed Laffy, tanking kamikazes and refusing to die. There are plenty of examples of destroyers holding their own against larger opponents. Anyway, that was just two examples of destroyers being mad lads in World War II. This was Cavalier Historia, and thank you for watching.